Well, it just so happened 1968, an entire year before Apollo 11, that a special movie came out with groundbreaking special effects to simulate space travel and depict scenes in outer space, including on the moon. That movie we're talking about, of course, is 2001, A Space Odyssey. Directed by none other than Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick, get this, actually hired high-level engineers from NASA to consult on the film. Did the moon landing photo video come from Hollywood? Kubrick certainly had the technology to make us think that it did. Hey, Unexplained Ones, catch new episodes every Monday, and if you would like to support the show and much more, check out BigfootUFO.com.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic threw their plans against us.
Prior to your abduction, did you believe in UFOs or any sort of alien life form?
All things unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Hello, all you unexplained ones out there. Welcome to the show.
There's a picture of a rock on the moon, and it clearly has the letter C on it. Now, or at least it did. Now, get this. NASA actually said, oh, whoops, that was a photo processing anomaly, and they literally have photoshopped the C off the rock. Now if you pull the picture up, the C is gone, right? So they literally photoshopped the moon rock picture to take the C off, which they said that their processing put on there to start with. And last but not least here for the photo video anomalies, if we went to the moon, this was one of the greatest achievements in the history of humankind. You would think that the videotapes of this accomplishment would have went straight to the Smithsonian or would have went somewhere highly secure to be preserved for all time, right? I kid you not, NASA lost, or they were lost, the original tapes of the moon missions. Ultimately, after not finding them, you know what NASA said? They said, you know what? Kind of like my grandma used to record over Matlock when new episodes of Mama's Family would come on. NASA says they recorded over the tapes. They recorded over some of the most valuable historical items in the history of humankind, like they were just old episodes of Alf. All right, over to you,
Hey,
CJ.
Alf's a good show.
Okay.
Love me some Alf, and Alf's an alien, by the way. Over to CJ.
So this is so hard. Again, this is so hard because everything that you've said is very intriguing. And I've watched a lot of videos and saw all of the same things. But anything can be spun based on how somebody wants to spin it. So the NASA recording of the tapes, like how am I going to prove that? Am I going to call NASA and ask them for the tapes? They're not going to give them to me anyways. In the C on the rock, could somebody else have put that there and then blamed NASA? I just don't know. I wish that I had a better idea. But I will say that in prepping for this show, I watched lots of different videos about the moon landing. Did we land? Did we not? What are the conspiracy theories? What are the answers to those conspiracy theories? And one thing that really stuck with me was that the maker of the cameras that were used to take the photos on the moon said that it would have been nearly impossible for them to wear those cameras on the front of their spacesuits, not even be able to look through a viewfinder, not be able to adjust the viewfinder, or the lens, excuse me, to push the buttons with their gloves on. All of that would make it really incredibly difficult to get good photos on the moon. So when I heard that, I thought, okay, the maker of this camera is saying that. So obviously these were taken in a studio because they're really beautiful photos for 1969. And then I watched another video where another guy said we had the astronauts wear those cameras everywhere they went for months leading up to it. And they took pictures of every single thing. They took them with them to the grocery store, wherever they went to take pictures. And so they got really good at using them. I want to believe we landed on the moon. I really do. And part of me doesn't believe it. The pictures, there were a lot of anomalies and things. So that was a big one for me. I'm giving it a 6 that they were faked.
Boom. 6 aliens for photo video anomalies. Smitty.
I think, too, and by the way, about the phone call, Nixon could probably get the astronauts on the phone easier than I can mounts most of the time. So,
Send that text.
It would be easier for Nixon to call Buzz Aldrin than me to get mounts half the time. So, but I don't know. And the thing about photography, there's a lot of issues during that period of time. So, who knows what would have picked up. I mean, all these people talk about, well, this would have happened and this would have happened. The only problem is none of them have been to the moon. So it's just like being up in the stands when I was coaching. People would say, well, I do this and I do that. Well, they wasn't down on the field coaching either, or on the floor during basketball. So it's hard to say what could be seen and what's possible in some of this stuff if we don't know how film reacts to that particular atmosphere. So it's one of those things that you can kind of emulate on the Earth, but you can't 100% emulate it unless you're standing on the moon.
So I believe Smitty gave it 2 aliens. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. What do I think about these photo video anomalies? Well, I don't have to think anything. I don't have to have an opinion. Here's what I know. I know I'm not going to watch any of these original tapes because NASA lost them. NASA doesn't help their own selves out when it comes to these hoax theories because they make themselves look like like the Three Stooges, just a bungling group of rank amateurs recording
I feel like some people think that about us.
the videotapes of the moon landings with their favorite episodes of Alf and Mama's Family. So I'm going to give this 9. Photo video anomalies. Hey, that's a fact. There are photo video anomalies. That ain't my fault. So I'm giving it a 9. All right.
I will say this.
All right.
This is not unusual. John Wilkes Booth, after he shot Lincoln and was shot, they had a picture of Booth dead, laying out for the Undertaker, and the picture was lost. So not the first time the government's ever lost something. Probably won't be the last either.
A little too much evidence in that one. They had to lose it real quick.
By the way, longtime listener Alabama George said Van Allen belt is his biggest problem with the moon landing. I'm with you there. It's a big problem for me as well. Our final category in part 1 tonight. Part 1 is the moon landing never happened. It was a hoax. It's one of my favorite categories. Stanley Kubrick. It just so happened, CJ and Smitty and listeners, that the year before Apollo 11, 1968, a movie came out, a movie that we've talked about on this show. CJ and Smitty, you may not remember this, but we actually did an entire episode on this movie. CJ proved she knew very little trivia whatsoever about this movie. Do you remember that,
Space
CJ?
Odyssey.
Do you remember that? And not only that, but
Oh.
this movie has played a role in our show many times since then. Talk about synchronicity with the appearance of the rectangular anomalies all over the planet, right? Remember those?
Yep.
What are they called again? Why am I blanking on what the rectangular
Monoliths.
The monoliths, right? The monoliths. Well, it just so happened 1968, an entire year before Apollo 11, that a special movie came out with groundbreaking special effects to simulate space travel and depict scenes in outer space, including on the moon. That movie we're talking about, of course, is 2001, A Space Odyssey,
Space Odyssey.
directed by none other than Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick, get this, actually hired high-level engineers from NASA to consult on the film. Did Kubrick know folks with NASA? Absolutely. They consulted 2001 A Space Odyssey. Did the moon landing photo video come from Hollywood? Kubrick certainly had the technology to make us think that it did. Were the astronauts really in lower Earth orbit? Some people think that we just sent our astronauts into lower Earth orbit while Kubrick filmed some of these scenes in Hollywood. Could the NASA video, back to tech here, have been pre-recorded? Guess what? The television networks would not have known if this NASA feed was actually pre-recorded or not. The grainy footage of Neil Armstrong was clunky, grainy. Again, we said NASA said this low-tech video is on purpose to avoid tech issues. They lost the original tape, so again, we don't know if it was pre-recorded or not. One of my favorite things about this Stanley Kubrick thing, and this is what I found out in my research, it even goes past 2001: A Space Odyssey. Raise your hand if you've seen The Shining. Smitty, you've seen The Shining, right?
This is not
I
raising
can't get
my
my hand into the screen. There we go.
Some people say Stanley Kubrick was very well aware of the theories with him and the Apollo 11 mission and the Apollo program. Check out this picture. I bet you wonder if you remember this, of Danny, the creepy boy, Red Rum from The Shining. Check out his sweater.
Danny Torrance.
Yep, check out his sweater.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. That reaction.
What year was that filmed?
The Shining was in 70 something after the Apollo program.
Yeah.
What was the little boy's name?
Danny.
Danny Torrance.
And for our folks that can't see, Danny Torrance in The Shining literally wore an Apollo 11
Oh my gosh, that's
sweater.
so crazy.
An Apollo 11 sweater. Stanley Kubrick may not have helped fake the moon landing in Hollywood, but he certainly didn't mind messing with people's heads in The Shining. And some people actually say that Jack Nicholson's his character in The Shining, his descent into madness, represented Stanley Kubrick's own guilt over the Apollo program. Now, I do want to address this real quick. Some people say, and Smitty brought this up, he said 100,000 people worked on the Apollo program. Actually, the estimates are more like 400,000 were involved in the Apollo program. However, unlike every NASA program since, which has been highly open to the press, these Apollo programs were extremely compartmentalized. The press was never given direct access to the astronauts or exactly what was happening. Very interesting, right? As a matter of fact, people estimate that perhaps less than 100 people were actually in the inner circle of what was actually happening with the Apollo program. So could Stanley Kubrick have faked this in Hollywood in front of 400,000 people? No. But given how compartmentalized it was, what do you think, Smitty? Stanley Kubrick helped fake the moon landing.
It's possible, but I don't see how they would have. I guess they could have faked it with. I don't know. I just don't think it's faked personally. But Kubrick, if anybody could have done it, he could have had because he was a super great director. Of course, he also filmed Clockwork Orange, so that made him pretty messed up in the head. But one of the most horrifying
Messed up
movies I've ever
enough
seen.
to fake the moon landing,
Oh,
Smitty?
no.
Well, how many aliens you giving
Well,
Stanley Kubrick?
I'm going to give him 2.
I think Smitty just doesn't want the moon landing to be a hoax because he's a history expert.
Yeah.
Well, maybe so.
Well,
It's possible.
whoever has the power writes the history, right?
That's right. Well, over to you, CJ. Stanley Kubrick helped fake the moon landing.
Okay. Yeah. So I didn't want to believe it. But as you know, as a child, you hear those words, right? That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And it just sounds so powerful and beautiful and
I'm going to step off
like
the limb now.
bringing countries and worlds together and uniting humankind. And then if you listen to it with the idea that it was a hoax, it sounds very scripted and dramatic and like something that only, I don't know, a movie director could come up with. I do think that it would be a lot easier to fake the moon landing in terms of creating a movie of it or a show of it than it would be to actually get a man to the moon. And then throw in all of the other astronauts, that were involved in the mission that were killed dramatically before it happened, and going back to the compartmentalized, only so many people knew about it. I think like 8 or 10 astronauts died of really tragic things like catching on fire and car accidents and things like that before Apollo 11. So yeah, I think it's really very possible that Stanley Kubrick could have created it. I think that is possible. I don't know that happened, but I certainly think it could happen. So I'm giving this one a 9.
Wow. 9 aliens from CJ. I'm going to tell you something. Danny Torrance approves. Red rum. No red rum for CJ. Danny Torrance in his super creepy Apollo 11 sweater from The Shining approves. Listener George Winter says the biggest problem he has with the moon landing being fake is the number of people that would have been in on the lie. Someone would have told. That, of course, is an argument. But like we said, it was so compartmentalized. They say perhaps less than 100 people actually really knew.
I think that some people
going
were
on.
about to tell and lost their lives because of it. There were 3 astronauts, and I should have written down their names, but they were supposed to be the ones to go to space. And one guy came out and said, this mission is a disaster. Somebody is going to die. Somebody is going to lose their lives. And just weeks later, he and 2 other astronauts were killed in a fire in a simulation.
I tell you one
So-
thing, that'll keep your mouth
Keep your mouth shut. Another astronaut and his wife were killed.
That right there. Well, I tell you, Stanley Kubrick, I love this conspiracy theory, and here's what I know. He certainly had the technology to put on television a very convincing moon landing. He was connected with people high up in NASA. NASA literally helped him make 2001: A Space Odyssey. Later on, Stanley Kubrick threw it all back in our faces in The Shining. So I am also giving this 9 aliens. Stanley Kubrick, I think he quite possibly was in on it. Absolutely. And so that concludes part 1. The moon landing was a hoax. We'll go back to final thoughts at the very end, Smitty. But now on to part 2 tonight. The flip side of the coin. The moon landing was not a hoax. Smitty, this is your time to shine. The moon landing did happen. but for reasons maybe that, not what we were led to believe. So part 2, moon landing did happen. This one's for you also, Trent Leonard, longtime listener Trent Leonard. But not for the reasons we were led to believe. Moon landing did happen, but. All right, so we have a few categories here. But first, little background. Oh, and by the way, I did want to ask Smitty something, though. As far
what's
as
that?
the moon landing was a hoax. Smitty, our history expert.
Yeah.
Let's just pretend we could not go to the moon. Did we
Right.
have reasons? Would we have had reasons to hoax a moon landing?
Oh yeah. I mean, we had reasons. It, like I said, it was back and forth. Communism, democracy, especially after the Bay of Pigs incident made us look so weak because we basically left the Cuban refugees that had been trained by the CIA out to dry, and then the nuclear missile, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then of course them actually putting Sputnik in the air. Yes, we would have had definite cause to fake it if we wanted people to perceive that we were more powerful than the Russians, because at the time we were the two superpowers. We wanted to look better. They had that domino theory. If one country falls to communism, the countries around it will fall to communism. A lot of that had to do with who has the best technology. Like you said, we made the atomic bomb, they made the atomic bomb. We made the hydrogen bomb, they made the hydrogen bomb. So it was just back and forth, back and forth. So yeah, there would be a cause for sure.
Thanks, Smitty. So we do have motivation for faking the moon landing. Part 2, moon landing did happen, but, well, so CJ, Smitty listeners, in the 40s, scientists actually were seriously contemplating space travel and what it would take to actually make this happen. But then something did happen in 1947 that shook the world. In 1947, of course, in Roswell, New Mexico, something crashed out in the desert on Rancher Mac Brazel's property. Our own military followed this up by saying, "We have recovered a flying saucer." This was in the headlines of the paper. A lot of folks say, yes, an extraterrestrial craft did crash in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. I want to get our rating on this first because this is such a key to all of this. Smitty, Roswell, 1947. How many aliens do you give that an extraterrestrial craft did land or crash?
I say three. I'm just not totally convinced about the existence of aliens. I'm more the kind of person that would have to see something with my own two eyes a lot of the time. I would be more apt to think that there was a Sasquatch than I would maybe aliens, but people say it is kind of arrogant for us to feel like we're the only ones in the universe. With all the evidence that goes on, I don't know why they wouldn't have revealed themselves to us. Why they would have kept themselves such a secret for so long.
Well, Smitty, what do you make of the military putting in the paper that they recovered a flying saucer?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty hardcore evidence. Of course, they could have, found something and misinterpreted it. But of course, there is that whole ideology about reverse engineering the alien technology so we could go to the moon. So I don't know. Sometimes I'm still on the fence. So I don't know. Three's not really. That's kind of more like a fluid rating, I guess you could say.
All right, CJ, Roswell, New Mexico, aliens crash landing in their UFO.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I personally believe that there's aliens out there, just given how large the universe is. And if they were to get to us, it would take a really, really long time. So, of course, it's possible that just one craft made it here and none others did, or others have, and we've never heard about them, is also a possibility. And of course, if a craft did get here from another planet, then the technology would have to be far superior to ours. So that would be of great interest to our government. Roswell is not something I spent a whole lot of time thinking about growing up. That is also new new territory for me. I'm gonna give this 1 of 5. I think it's possible.
5 aliens for CJ. Aliens landed in Roswell, New Mexico, crash landed, as it were. I like it. Well, here's what I know. I know that a previous guest of ours, the head of astrophysics at Harvard University, is about to embark on a privately funded mission to search for extraterrestrial objects in our ocein. Is Smitty?
That's awesome.
Is Smitty? Yeah. You know, are you giving him a 3?
It is awesome.
Does Avi Loeb get a 3?
No. More than that, but that's pretty neat.
Here's what else I know.
Pay us money.
That's right.
To do that.
Here's what else I know. I know that our military did say that they had recovered a flying saucer. I know that our military swarmed on Roswell, New Mexico, right after this incident. Listener George Winters says, of course, it was a weather balloon. You know what's amazing to me? Like, I just got to go off on this a little bit. Weather balloons in 1947, weather balloons still in 2023 account for so many of these sightings. That's officially, according to friend of the show, Ronald.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
Even in 2023, we still got the weather balloons everywhere, but none of us have ever seen one. Really interesting. So, Roswell is just such a classic, legendary event. I've got to give Roswell 9. 9 aliens. Something happened at Roswell. It goes way beyond a weather balloon. I can promise you that. Now, shortly after Roswell, New Mexico, the incident, whatever it was, our military did come up with something called Project Horizon. And Project Horizon was for nothing short of establishing a permanent base on the moon. We don't even have to rate this. This is a fact. Project Horizon was real. We wanted to establish a permanent base on the moon. What we have to ask ourselves is, could this have been in response to Roswell? And CJ and I have talked a lot about repercussions, repercussions of what if the moon landing was a hoax. Well, what are the repercussions of if aliens did crash land in Roswell, New Mexico? Now, I want to give you two a thought experiment here. Imagine you're a scientist pre-1947. You are interested in space travel, but you have no idea how to make it happen. You have no idea how to escape our atmosphere, how to survive the Van Allen belts, how to navigate the vast distances of space, and then something crashes in Roswell, New Mexico, something not of this earth, creatures that have right before our eyes defeated these barriers to space travel that our scientists have not begun to figure out. What would be the repercussions of this event happening on our scientific community?
Well, if they were revealed, if it was revealed to them, repercussions would be phenomenal. But, if they didn't obviously keep it under wraps, it wouldn't really matter that much.
I'm not sure repercussions to our scientific community other than, the fear of some sort of alien invasion and not being prepared for that is the only thing that I can think of. Is okay, this other species has made it here. How many more are there? Are they coming in peace? Are they coming in war? Are they coming to take over our planet? What do we do? How do we handle it? What kind of craft do we have to create to protect ourselves? I guess it would be no different than Russia sending something here and it landing here and us not knowing if it's some sort of explosive device, what the purpose of it is, how to handle it. Those are the repercussions I could think of.
Well said, CJ. So we're actually going to combine two categories here. Project Horizon, CJ brought up this concept of a threat. This clearly would have made the moon a strategically important military location. CJ and Smitty, let's rate what are the odds that Project Horizon, which was a real project to establish a permanent base on the moon, and let me pull this one up too, the Apollo 11 was our reaction to an alien threat.
This is so hard because in our previous part, you made me like make a stance on whether or not we actually went to the moon, and now you're having me make a stance on if we went to the moon, what was the reasoning for it. So now I have to like take back all of my other ratings. Yeah, I mean, literally when we started having conversations about this particular show, you asked me like, what are the repercussions of us faking the moon landing? And I kept thinking to myself, why did we go to the moon? I still can't figure out truly what the reason was that we went to the moon, other than some sort of show of manpower and technological superiority. I cannot think of a reason or what we really gained from going to the moon. So this does pose a good reason that we might go to the moon, as if we were trying to protect ourselves or learn more about some sort of alien threat. So I would rate that pretty highly if we're shifting our mindset and now saying we did go to the moon, and here's why. 7. I'll give you a number. 7.
7 aliens from CJ that Project Horizon and Apollo 11 were reactions to the very real alien threat that we discovered in 1947 right on our own back door in Roswell, New Mexico. Smitty, what say you?
Well, okay. Am I rating it on the fact that I think that's what the government did, or is my opinion that that's what happened?
You are rating the possibility that Project Horizon and Apollo 11 were reactions to an alien threat.
Okay, so if I'm rating this based on what I think how the government responded to Roswell, and I think that's probably a 5. The government tries to cover all distinct possibilities. You know what I mean? They try to cover all distinct possibilities, just like the Cuban Missile Crisis or the U-2 spy plane incident. All of those things, those were us covering our bases to try to keep from being annihilated. So it's possible, that if we went to the moon, that's why we did it.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I think Roswell, it obviously happened. I believe General Corso in The Day After Roswell, the great book I'm so close to finishing. I believe him when he says,
long book.
It was so long. I believe him when he says that we did recognize the military importance of the moon, not only is the importance of getting there before the Russians, but also the importance of getting there along with or alongside extraterrestrials. So obviously I'm having to play devil's advocate too. I'm having to be, torn here because of my ratings with the moon landing never happened. It was a hoax, and along with these, that the moon landing did happen, but not for the reasons we were led to believe. So I have no choice but to give this an 8. Apollo 11 and Project Horizon were reactions to alien threats. All right, our next category here under part 2 is Star Wars 1981.
To be continued.
Thanks. Like, share, follow, comment, subscribe, support. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the Alaska.
We do.
Okay.
More at BigfootUFO.com.
All things unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.